covering the inflammatory conditions of the nose, epistaxis, and tumors of the nose. So let's first talk about rhinitis. So there are many types of rhinitis. We'll go through each one of them in detail. So the first type of rhinitis will be the acute rhinitis. It's also known as common cold, most commonly caused by viruses, which are your rhinovirus, coronavirus, influenza virus, and adenovirus. There are two stages of this disease. One is the dry stage and another one is the catarrhal stage. So in the dry stage, you have general symptoms like fever, lethargy, and sore throat. In catarrhal stage, you have watery serous discharge coming out of your nose. Now, the viral damages the mucociliary system and the mucosal epithelium. This promotes bacterial growth and it can have some kind of secondary promote bacterial growth which is going to cause purulent discharge. So those are all the things which you need to know about acute rhinitis. Moving on to chronic rhinitis, there are two types of chronic rhinitis. It can be either due to a specific cause or it's also known as chronic granulomatous conditions of the nose, or it can be due to non-specific causes as well. So the non-specific causes of chronic rhinitis are your recurrent acute inflammation, your septal deviations, your polyps and different nasal masses, and it can also be due to air pollutant exposure. So, talking about the specific causes or the granulomatous conditions of the nose, there are many conditions which we are going to split as bacterial, fungal, viral, and protozoal. So the bacterial causes are TB, lupus vulgaris, leprosy, scleroma, syphilis, actinomyces. So lupus vulgaris is actually a symptom which is seen in the uh, granulomatous condition of nose. That is not actually another bacteria which is going to cause a disease. And then the fungal causes are rhinosporidiosis, the most important, aspergillosis, mucormycosis, candidiasis, histoplasmosis, blastomycosis. So all of these are going to occur only in immunocompromised patients. Immunocompromised patients are going to be affected by these, but rhinosporidiosis can affect a normal individual as well. So the viral one would be AIDS and protozoal is leishmaniasis. We are not going to see in detail about each one of these. Of these, we are going to talk in detail about 6 of these conditions, which are TB, sarcoidosis, rhinoscleroma, actinomycosis, syphilis, and rhinosporidiosis. So in TB, you see this characteristic uh, rash known as lupus vulgaris on the face, and then it can also lead to destruction of nasal skin and cartilages. So these are the two important points when you're going to write about TB of nose. Then moving on to sarcoidosis, it mainly affects the lymph nodes, lungs, and joints and skin. Rarely it affects the nose. So you find one specific uh, rash known as lupus pernio. So this rash can be seen and identified clinically very easily. This sarcoidosis mainly affects the septum and the inferior turbinate. So what you're going to see is a yellowish submucous nodules on anterior rhinoscopy. So moving on to rhinoscleroma, this is known as also this has one name like hump nose, if I'm not wrong. It's caused by Klebsiella pneumonia. The features are similar to atrophic rhinitis. You'll have a foul smelling nasal discharge and dry mucosa and crusting. So this may progress to affect the vestibule, causing vestibulitis, and then vestibulitis is a dangerous area of space because it has connection to the subarachnoid space and it goes into the meninges. So moving on, actinomyces. This is caused by actinomyces israeli. This affects immunocompromised patients only. It has similar findings to a nasal furuncle. So the last bacteria which we'll be talking about is syphilis. So syphilis, the tertiary stage of the disease, is going to manifest with nasal symptoms. So you're going to see isolated gummata in the nasal cavity. Congenital syphilis will have purulent bloody nasal discharge which can be mistook for a normal rhinitis of child. So these are all the important granulomatous conditions which you need to know. I didn't want to complicate it with a lot of points, but actually there are more points which you need to know. But you just for now know the names and the most important points of these. And moving on to allergic rhinitis. So allergic rhinitis basically a type 1 hypersensitivity reaction which is mediated by IgE. It can either be seasonal or perennial. So if it's seasonal, it's usually due to some kind of pollen. If it's perennial, it's either due to dust or pet dander or mold or any foods or latex. All those are your perennial causes of allergy. So the clinical features which you're going to have are sneezing attacks, itching of the nose, and itchy conjunctivitis. So any kind of sneezing or itching, intermittent in nature, which can be asked as history. Like when you're asking the history of the disease, you can find out all these important points and go towards allergic rhinitis. So the important thing you need to do is allergic testing or the skin prick test to see the response. That you need to know the treatment of allergic rhinitis, very important. So the various agents you can use are your mast cell stabilizers, which are your sodium sodium chromoglycate or nedochromil, your alpha 2 sympathomimetics, which are your metazolines, oxymetazoline, xylometazoline, your local H1 antagonist, azelastine and levocabastine, and local steroids like fluticasone, budesonide, and then systemic H1 antagonists like cetirizine, and then your diphenhydramine, and your anticholinergic drugs. So you can give any one of these for treatment of allergy. And for long-term allergic rhinitis, which is not responding to any of this, you can try immunotherapy by omalizumab, which is an anti-Ig uh, monoclonal antibody, or you can go for surgical management where you do turbinate resection or septoplasty. So in this picture, there's actually a lot of new drugs which are mentioned. You can just have a look at it and use it to write your answers. I'm not going to be explaining each one of them. If you want to know, just pause the video here and have a good look at it. Moving on to next condition is which is your vasomotor rhinitis. So as the name suggests, it's a neurovascular autonomic disturbances and it's going to present similar to allergic rhinitis. So in allergic rhinitis, you're going to have some kind of history related to allergic exposure, but in vasomotor rhinitis, you're going to have history something related to change in temperature. So and the treatment modalities is similar to allergic rhinitis. So if they ask about vasomotor rhinitis, just tell it's due to neurovascular autonomic disturbances, and then it's related to temperature, and then you talk everything what you know about allergic rhinitis. Then moving on to atrophic rhinitis. So this is the dryness of the nasal mucosa. Etiology is unknown. Secondary causes may be due to SMA, submucous resection surgery, excessive use of nasal drops, cocaine drug abuse, or radiotherapy. The clinical features are your dry and crusted nasal mucosa. Treatment is nasal dose with saline or decongestant should not be used in these patients because they'll aggravate the condition. The surgical management would be a cartilage graft on the mucosa to decrease the space. Then moving on, hormonal rhinitis is also known as pregnancy-related rhinitis. It's due to estrogen. Then rhinitis medicamentosa, it's a long-term decongestant use. So like xylometazoline and oxymetazoline, you keep using it, you will get this condition. Other drugs which can cause this condition are reserpine, beta blockers, ACE inhibitors, and OCPs, especially due to the effect of estrogen. So what happens is there's an allergic reaction. Use a nasal decongestant, temporary symptomatic relief, and as soon as you stop the nasal decongestant, the allergic reaction comes back to you again. So this is like summary of all the diseases. I've put it together as a picture for you guys. You can just pause the video here and have a good look at it. It covers most of the disease which I'm covering here. So moving on to epistaxis. So epistaxis is basically bleeding of the nose. So you can split it in two ways, either like based on the cause or the location. So you can split into local causes or systemic causes. So the local causes will be your chronic sinusitis, and then your foreign bodies, your polyps, your JNA like juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibroma, then irritants, your corticosteroid rhinitis. All these can be your local causes. Your systemic causes like your bleeding disorders, your hemophilia, hypertension, leukemia, liver disease, and then aspirin anticoagulants, then other bleeding disease like von Willebrand disease, vitamin K deficiency, DIC. Then all these are going to cause epistaxis, or you can split it into the uh, type of etiology. So traumatic, neoplastic, hematological, structural, drug-related, inflammatory. Same things are going to be structured in both ways. Whichever classification you find appropriate, please follow that and remember that and use that to write your answers. So just a revision of the anatomy of the blood supply of the lateral wall of the nose. So it's by four arteries: anterior ethmoidal, facial artery, and then sphenopalatine and greater palatine. All meet at one place known as Little's area, where it's also known as Kieselbach's plexus. That's in the anterior part. In the posterior part, there's a sphenopalatine plexus, pterygoid plexus, or Woodruff's plexus. It consists of the tributaries of facial vein, cavernous sinus, and the pterygoid plexus. So the treatment for epistaxis, you're going to follow this algorithm. First, you stabilize the patient and you give compression for 10 minutes. If that doesn't stop the bleeding, you do cauterization with silver nitrate. Okay, if that doesn't work, then you go for packing, and if that doesn't work, you go for posterior control. So this is the um, algorithm for management of epistaxis. This is a more detailed algorithm which you might find useful. So if you want to go through it, pause the video now, just read through it. We are running short on time. So this is the picture of anterior packing, and this is a picture of posterior packing. So anterior packing, you can use either Vaseline impregnated gauze or nasal tampon, and then for posterior packing, use Foley's catheter or a balloon catheter. So that is all about epistaxis. Finally, the tumors of the nose. So the tumors of the external nose are split into benign, pre-malignant, and malignant. So the benign tumor will be your rhinophyma, connective tissue sebaceous hyperplasia. The treatment for this condition is ablation. You will see a huge uh, some kind of it'll be like you know those hump nose kind of thing will be. So I've not added the photo over here, but you can see in that previous all conditions of nose will be there over there. The pre-malignant lesions are your actinic keratosis, Bowen's disease, cutaneous horn, or malignant lentigo. These can transform into malignant conditions, which are mainly your basal cell carcinoma and squamous cell carcinoma. Just have a good look at the pictures to see how they are different. And moving on to the cancer of the nasal cavity and PNS. So the benign tumors, most important one is inverted papilloma and osteomas. Juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibroma is an important condition which occurs in adolescent male. They say it's due to that testosterone effect. So we'll cover this when we're talking about the pharynx. And the malignant tumors are again your squamous cell carcinoma, adenocarcinoma, and adenocystic carcinoma. So this is a pretty long video, but I think I've covered almost all the important rhinitis, epistaxis, and tumors of nose. So please do go through this video again if you found uh, it really useful, and please do share these videos to your friends so that others may also be benefited. Thank you.